everyone. I'm still here. How exciting is this? We haven't gone anywhere. Exclusive Twitter segment. We've been talking about it all day. I've been most excited about this. Next 30 minutes or so, we're answering your questions. We're taking your questions, your comments, hashtag the MMA Hour. How awesome is this? They always tell me, we want more MMA Hour, more MMA Hour. Well, now you're getting it. This is incredible. So let's bring back New York Rick. I do believe that people have been hitting us up. We have our own page on Twitter, right? TheMMAHour.twitter.com. People have been watching the show there for the first time, and we ain't going nowhere, so get used to it. But I do believe that the revolution is no longer being televised. It's being tweeted.
That's right. And
yes.
I know you were effusive about Twitter earlier in the show. I also am a big fan of Twitter. It's my main platform of choice. And I'm happy to kind of see this partnership. And also the first go has definitely been a success. A lot of people coming to us and saying that they've been enjoying watching the show on Twitter, which is obviously great. I've gotten a ton of questions on Twitter, so I think ultimately this was the right move, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
All right, what do we got? Let's get it rolling. There's a lot to discuss.
Let's answer some questions here. First question: there was a lot of weird stuff to happen. Our friend Jordan asks, "What is the weirdest thing to happen over the last few days in MMA?"
Oh my. Well. Okay, so there's a lot that happened.
Yeah. If we wanted to name a few.
Well, Bellator NYC, I thought was a very successful event. We pretty much ran down the entire card with Scott Coker. The Michael Chandler injury was unique. Aaron Pico losing as quickly as he did was unique. The double knockdown was unique. The national anthems before the main event, unique. All kinds of unique stuff. Goldie and then Mauro Ranallo.
Yep.
All kinds of stuff.
Oh, speaking of Mauro, real quick.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mauro. Back with the WWE NXT.
Yes, of course.
Gonna probably call the Mayweather pay-per-view. I mean, shout out to that guy.
What a week, right?
Yeah, what a week for Mauro.
It's amazing. He's got like 15 lives. You know, like he loses a couple gigs, he comes back with
10
even
more.
bigger gigs.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Oklahoma City, Yamasaki, all that stuff and more. But of course, and I didn't really want to go there, but if we're asking for weird, Justine Kish, right?
Yeah,
that's the
I think that's got to be my choice as well. Also, but we mentioned Chandler's injury. How about the stool being pulled out from Chandler? That was definitely a weird one.
Very weird.
Seeing him planted on his butt like that. But yeah, I think the octagon being soiled.
Okay, so tell us what happened. So Justine Kish is fighting Felice Herrig.
Yep, she's
on the ground.
Naked choke.
Go ahead.
It seems like she's soiled her shorts, but it's not really clearly evident until she goes to her back, and then she leaves a trail. But fortunately, she had a good attitude about it and a good response, which you could find on her Twitter. So go there if you're...
So she tweeted something like #shit happens, right?
Basically, yes.
So is that accurate? Like, did that really happen? Or is she playing... I mean, is that...
Well, okay, if it didn't happen...
Did you notice it?
I did notice it, yes. If it didn't happen, kudos to her for capitalizing and taking credit for it, because I think she'll be able to turn this into more of a positive and notoriety than anything negative. I don't think anybody's, looking at it as, any downside or any hazard or anything like that. I think she's riding the opportunity, and good for her. She suffered defeat, but she has a good attitude about it.
Can I just say that I've been supremely impressed with Felice Herrig? I know this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the question.
No, it does.
But for her to come back after the PVZ loss, for her to rebound like that, I mean, I think we all kind of thought that, like, okay, Paige beat her on Fox, and this was sort of the passing of the torch, and, Felice was going to regress. She's come back since 3 in a row. She hasn't won 3 in a row in several years. And I think she's never looked better. She just defeated Alexa Grasso. Kish was undefeated. She's never looked better.
Absolutely. She's put in the work, and she is, I believe, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but she has the second longest winning streak in that division.
I actually like the idea of her versus Courtney Casey, or maybe even a more high-profile fight. But Casey's coming off a win over Jessica Aguilar, and hopefully that suspension gets lifted as well. But yeah, she has been through a lot, and you don't want to hear someone get emotional and say the kind of things that she said if she feels that. But I can't. I would be lying if I didn't initially think about what Casey brought up, which was Felice has been someone who has, I guess you could say, not been shy about, flaunting her sexuality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that whatsoever. I have no problem with it. And so, afterwards now she's saying that she feels like she's not getting pushed. I feel like there's a lot more there to investigate. Like, why do you feel that way? And do you regret going down a certain path in your career? But it's like if Courtney Casey says that, I mean, she doesn't have that sort of history. Felice does have that sort of history. We've talked about it on the show. You get what I'm saying? I
do. And it's also, the idea of being pushed could mean a lot of different things. There's plenty of fighters who are, in an elevated position who feel like they're not being pushed as well. Demetrius Johnson feels like he's not being properly pushed. There's a lot of layers to that story. And I think, more needs to kind of be said about it before we can, judge it properly. But certainly, I don't disagree with anything you're saying there.
Courtney Casey, by the way, just told me that she just got her May 22nd test back from USADA, and she just got it right now, and she said that sample is clean as well. So
there you go.
For whatever it is worth.
I mean, it's worth a lot. I think most people are on her side and see that, there's been an injustice here. So good for her.
Quite the power.
Next question from our buddy, Bill Steinmetz. 3 former champions just suffered another loss, the champions being BJ Penn, Fedor, and Johnny Hendricks. Which of those is the most damaging? This is a question about legacy.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the question is, are any of their legacies damaged? Do you feel like they're doing harm to their legacies at this point?
Okay, well, first, let's get something out of the way. Did you watch the BJ Penn fight?
Yeah, I did.
You did. You couldn't help yourself.
Listen.
Did you think that you were really going to stay away?
30 minutes before.
Yeah.
I haven't told you this.
Okay.
30 minutes before, your mom texted me.
Get out of here.
Your mom texted me 30 minutes before.
I didn't know that.
Are you going to watch the fight? And I was like,
hardcore fan.
I'm on the fence. I don't know. Like, I'm not expecting him to win. And even if he wins, it's going down a slippery road. But you know what? That text kind of got me thinking more about it than I was.
She's to blame?
No, not at all. In fact, I mean, your mom is one of the sweetest women in the entire universe.
People, not just women. People.
Fair enough. One of the sweetest people in the entire universe. She always has something really, really nice to say to me. I think she was just looking out for my best interests. And
you didn't really think you'd stay away.
Look, I was thinking up until about 30 minutes before that I was going to be able to not watch it, and then I caved like a chump.
Yeah.
I had to watch.
And so what were you thinking? So you don't get the whole experience of him walking out, which I think is a big mistake. If you're going to keep putting on BJ Penn fights, at least give us the walkout, because that's the one thing that usually goes right. You know what I mean? Yep. That's the one good thing in all of this. And so so we don't get the walkout, but we get him in the cage, and he doesn't win the first round, but he's not looking bad, right? He's kind of hanging in there. And then he drops him in the second round. What are you thinking?
Please end this now, so that we don't have round 3.
I envisioned all BJ Penn fans watching it like this, like through the cracks of, like one eye closed.
Close to accurate, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was not hopeful after round 1.
Yeah.
It's the type of matchup that he was put in there to destroy Seaver. Let's call it as it is. It wasn't the type of matchup that they were thinking BJ's going to squeak this one out and get back on track. They thought he was going to beat him handily, and he lost. He rocked them. It's just
worst loss of his career.
It's, to this point, you could point to the fact that everybody BJ's fighting is top level, is championship, is on their way to championships. This is not that, and it's not as heartbreaking. I mean, now that I'm hardened to it. I'm feeling the rain on my face and not even flinching.
What's heartbreaking is he feels like he has to keep fighting. He feels like in order to live a healthy life and a productive life, this is better than the alternative. Well, the alternative was when he was retired and he was going down the wrong path and he was drinking and things like that, and he just was lost as a retired fighter at his age. And so he has no other outlet. And BJ comes from a good family, and he's got some other opportunities with the gym and all that stuff. Someone needs to sit him down and tell him, you're just not the same person, and you're going to pay for this dearly later in life. You can't be taking these shots anymore. You're just not the same. It happens to all of us. There's no shame in it. But now it's incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Dennis Seaver is rock bottom. You can't keep fighting anymore. And I don't want to see the UFC release him and then someone else sign him, because that might happen.
I think it's going to happen no matter what. I think, and a few years ago when he first walked away, I said pretty much exactly this, that like he's the type of guy that needs this, and this is what he's got, and he's going to come back, and obviously he did. I don't think I was, some kind of Nostradamus on that. I think there were quite a few people who felt that way, but I just can't see it. I don't see the end. I don't see the end in sight. I think.
What do you do if you're the UFC?
You cut him.
You just cut him and wash your hands? Or do you try to help a legend? Do you try to help someone that helped build the company? I know you haven't had a great relationship with him. I know the story about K1. I know the story about Dan. But what do you do? How do you help him? Clear conscience, just wash your hands of a guy like that?
But how do you help him? You can sit him down. You can tell him.
You give him one of those ambassador jobs. I mean, Coker's,
they just fired all those guys.
Yeah.
They just fired all those guys.
Maybe not like a job, but like you fly him out to do autograph sessions, give him some money, be around the fight game.
It's not about that for BJ. Yeah. He doesn't need the job. He doesn't need the money. He just wants to fight. It's never going to be that for BJ. They put him in that ambassador job, and he wants to fight. It's never going to be about that. And you know what? I think the same can be said about Matt Hughes. It's not about that. It's not about that. The guys are born fighters, and they come from a different era. They come from a different style, and they're going to keep fighting. And there's so many guys like this. Kimbo, Brett Akamoto at ESPN did a piece where he spoke to some of the family members of Kimbo, and Icy Mike as well. And they were talking about how even while he's in the hospital, he's thinking about how he's going to get out and fight, and that this was his next fight. And they don't build them like that anymore, and BJ is one from that time. I don't think he's ever going to stop fighting.
And look, you don't want to take anything away from Dennis Seaver. He gets a victory. He's back on track. Yeah. This is a guy, a veteran who, needs a victory just as much. You can't help but feel, especially on Twitter, that everyone was kind of hoping that this worked out for BJ. He's such a revered and beloved fellow in the world of MMA. I mean, him and Fedor, it's kind of funny that they're both fighting on the same weekend, and they're both, suffering these kinds of losses. The Fedor one was more devastating, but their fan bases kind of rally around them in the same way. They are just loyal to a fault. And so to get back to the question, I don't know. It's a freaking depressing question.
No, let's not pick or choose. But are they damaging their legacies? Do you feel like the people will remember BJ Penn or Fedor differently because of these fights?
It's different because Fedor is doing this outside of Pride, and Pride is where he really made his name. So I think that people can compartmentalize the Pride Fedor, the American Fedor, and what I mean by that is when he started to fight, here in North America post Pride. So I don't think that Fedor is ruining anything. And actually, Chael and I spoke about legacy before the fight, about is his legacy on the line. And he said, and this is sort of a Chaelism, but like he doesn't subscribe to that. He doesn't believe in those kinds of things, that legacies are on the line. But there is something to be said for damaging a legacy and, your sort of lasting image and the last impression that you make. People talk about Willie Mays playing for the Mets, etc. I'd be very content if Fedor stopped fighting, because he's getting knocked out, he's getting rocked. Clearly, he can't take a punch the same way that he used to. I mean, he's getting knocked out cold, stiff. It's just not the same. His reflexes aren't the same. The damage that he's able to sustain isn't the same. I would be very content. Johnny Hendricks is an enigma. He's somewhat of a mess. I mean, he's not getting knocked out, but clearly he does not have the same kind of determination, the same kind of discipline that he once had. Why that is, I don't know, but we've seen in the past guys move up in weight and then think, oh, I'm all good, I don't have to push myself as much. And then we're faced with the situation where they miss weight and, they're now weighing 17 pounds more than where they were stars. And so the Johnny Hendricks situation is almost baffling that it's gone to this point, because it's not like he's getting, knocked out senseless like Fedor is, but I mean, the damage that he's doing to his body with all these weight cuts has to be taking a toll. And then the BJ one is just like it's like a slow deterioration of his skills. So they're all equally depressing. They're all they're all doing some kind of damage to their legacies. They're all, great fighters, all former champions, all people who, had great runs. It's just another reminder that there is no crueler game than the fight game. In baseball, you stick around too long, you start to strike out, you're slow, you can't make it to first as quick, you can't throw as well. In basketball, you're slow, you're on the bench. But here, you're just exposed. It's like you're naked, and the world is just seeing you all by yourself, look worse, getting roughed up, getting knocked out. It's the fall from grace from the top to the bottom in combat sports. There's nothing like it, and it's sad to watch. And unfortunately, it's the only kind of sport that doesn't have anything planned for the combatants after they're done competing in the NBA and the NFL and all these sports. And it's a different kind of sport because it's every man for themselves or every woman for themselves. But it's just it's cruel unlike anything other. And that's why I have so much respect for these fighters, because I can't imagine why anyone would want to do this. You get paid very little to the top. Once you make it to the top, you may not get paid what you are worth and what you deserve. And then the fall from the top is unlike anything we've ever seen in any other sport. And so it's just amazing that people actually want to do this.
But what's different there is that the fall still pays if you've made it to that top. And that's the difference. That's why it makes sense to keep doing it. The fall still pays. Whereas if you're a washed out NFL, washed out NBA guy, you're not going to get a contract because you can't make the team. But if viewers are still willing to watch some of our fallen heroes get beat up, then the pay is still going to be worth it. So it's
money isn't the only currency, and so you may get money and you may get more in your bank account, and that's great. It may pay, but you're paying for this in the long run, in my opinion. Especially when we're talking about getting knocked out.
Let's transition here. Bellator as well.
Yeah.
Phil Davis lost twice.
Yeah.
To the now reigning champ. What do you do next with Phil?
Bellator's divisions are kind of built. There was some talk of this last week. That they're held to a different standard. They should be held to a different standard. The UFC was founded in 1993. If you want to erase the first 7-8 years, they're still 16, 17 years old. Bellator is only 8 years old. And so, they're playing with a different deck of cards. So why I'm saying that is the divisions aren't as fleshed out. They don't have the same kind of budget. You can't talk about Viacom's, net worth. They're not throwing the world at Bellator. Bellator is just a very small part of what they're doing. And so it's kind of hard to predict in Bellator who's going where and what's next. I mean, you have some very clear-cut situations, like Douglas Lima's fighting Rory McDonald. We know that's happening. Or, I don't know, Chandler Primus. We know that's obvious. But in the light heavyweight division, I mean, we just heard from Scott. He said, King Mo is fighting Bader. Okay, great. But he could have gone in a different direction and no one really would have batted an eye. They're just in the position right now of making the best fights possible. And there's not so much this ranking system or this meritocracy or hierarchy. It just doesn't work that way right now. Hopefully at some point they'll get there. But let me just say this about the Bellator event. First of all, I had a ton of fun covering that event. It was a great vibe. I thought they put together a very nice card. Fans need to stop worrying to a certain degree about what it means for Bellator. Like I heard some people say like this was an awful night for Bellator. It wasn't an awful night for you and I. I mean, let's let them worry about, the ramifications of Pico and Chandler losing. But if you paid $50 to watch that, you got unpredictability. You got Pico losing in seconds. You got the Chandler thing. You got the double knockdown. You got the return of Chael and Van. So it's like we need to stop worrying so much. And I'm at fault here too sometimes about like what this means for the promotion and stuff like that. And sometimes just look at the product. And I thought top to bottom that was a very good night for Bellator. Heather Hardy, James Gallagher. I mean these were very entertaining fights and performances. And there was a lot at stake here. And I said to someone before the fight, I said, if the talk afterwards is that the main event was fixed or that something was fixed, Bellator's got a real problem. That didn't happen. And so that's a victory for them. There's no fixed talk. There's no talk that, they're beneath the UFC or, it's kind of funny. Could you imagine if the finish on Sunday with the Yamasaki thing happened on Saturday with Chael and Vanderlei, what people would have said about them? Could you imagine what kind of accusations would be thrown out? So overall, I thought this was a very good night for Bellator. The results may not have gone their way, but what was the big knock on Scott Coker and company when they were running Strikeforce? Too many mismatches. We know who's going to win. We know who you want to win. Well, we knew who they wanted to win on Saturday, and in many cases, that didn't happen. So I actually think that that's a good thing for them.
Yeah.
Did you go?
It's just... No.
Did you watch?
I went to that Big 3 thing at Barclays and then came home and oh no, that was Sunday. What did I do on Saturday? Something else. I forget. But no, I did not go. Did I watch? Yeah, I watched. I thought, and I feel the same way you do. I think that we can kind of be in the echo chamber a little bit sometimes and be thinking about, what does this mean for the promotion? Whereas I imagine, a large majority of the fans that plopped down some money for it weren't thinking the implications of Aaron Pico losing. I don't think they were necessarily with that. They were just seeing a finish. So yeah, I thought it was a fun card.
Did they or did we overhype Pico? Did we make a big mistake here? Or did they make a bigger mistake by putting him in there against an 82 guy?
No, because you got to, like Chandler said, they put the chips in his corner. They pushed it, and he had to take the bet and push it all in. They gave him everything they could, and sometimes you get Conor McGregor and sometimes you get Aaron Pico. But
go back to when this fight was announced and when we had Pico on, I was like, Zach Freeman is no slouch.
Yeah.
When I found out who he was fighting, 8-2 RFA. I mean, I think a lot of people
felt that way.
Yeah, we've seen worse.
In fact, let me just double check. Next question from Twitter, from Dana. Looking back at the fight,
DFW?
Did Bellator make a mistake by putting Pico against Freeman in his pro debut?
I mean, look, is
it a mistake?
Hindsight 2020. If he would have won as they expected him to, it would have been brilliant. But yeah, in hindsight, it was clearly a mistake.
I mean,
why?
Well, does beating Freeman add any more to the legacy of Pico or the legend of Pico than beating some 2-0 fighter or 1-1 fighter? I don't necessarily think so.
Yes, I kind of figured that this question was about also the debut at MSG on pay-per-view because those are added elements of pressure as well that they put on him. It's not like he debuted in Sacraville on the Bellator.com prelims.
I see
different.
Where you're going there, but I don't think that was what got Pico. I don't think that the stage got to Pico.
I think the whole package was pretty darn fresh. I mean, yes, he's fought for the Olympic team or competed, I should say, and he's been groomed. But like this was different. This was MSG. This was a lot of eyes on him. This was him alone. He's never fought in a cage before. He's never had a pro or amateur MMA fight. So this is a lot to put on a young man who's just 20 years old against another guy who's fought 10 fights and is a little older and has, a family and he's kind of, fighting to survive and to gain some respect. So look, I fully believe that Pico will be back. I fully believe that he is still someone to watch. I fully believe that he's a blue chip prospect. I fully believe that he is deserving of our attention. If we want to go silver lining on this, hey, now they got a guy in Zach Freeman that, hardly any of us knew, and they could do something with him, prospect killer, whatever you want to say. But yeah, in hindsight, it was a mistake. How
I thought you weren't going to go there. I thought you were going to cop out and say it's not a mistake.
It was a mistake. Absolutely, it was a mistake. In hindsight, yeah, sure, because look at what happened. How could you call it anything but a mistake?
You can't book him against a guy that game. You just can't. If that's what you're trying to do, and if you're, relatively known for building up prospects properly and putting them in some squash matches first, didn't seem like the right move. James Gallagher, does he want to create his own legacy, or is he okay playing second fiddle to Conor and taking pages out of his book?
I don't think
this question just highlighted because I've seen a lot of talk about him copying Conor. Is first of all, do you agree with that? Is he in the Conor McGregor mold?
Does he remind me of Conor? Yes, he's a teammate. Mm-hmm. His accent is kind of like his, although it's a little different. The similar tattoos, the similar attire, the brashness, the showmanship. Yeah, there are a lot of elements. But here's the part that you have to kind of understand when you're making this comparison. James Gallagher was a young teenager in the gym with Conor 24/7, sleeping at his coach's, apartment in a spare room. It would almost be crazy for him not to be like Conor McGregor. You get what I'm saying? Okay, Conor came into the UFC 4 years ago. James Gallagher was 16 years old. And so he looked up to Conor McGregor. And sure, he probably wanted to emulate him. And why wouldn't he want to emulate him? He's very successful, Conor is. And so, yeah, we're all our own people and we're going to go down different paths. But it's not like a knock on him, or it's not out of the ordinary for a young kid to try to emulate someone who's almost 10 years older than him, who's supremely successful in his chosen field as well. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't feel like, and I thought he handles it, he handled it perfectly. He's like, yeah, you want to compare me to, who I consider the GOAT, the guy who's going to beat Floyd, great. Better to be compared to him than some
Listen,
scrub.
if anybody wants to compare me to Conor McGregor,
yeah,
I'd be happy. Let me know.
Look,
you call me Conor McGregor, I'm okay with it.
Would it be better for him if he was completely different? Maybe you can make that case, but I don't think it's a knock on him. He's getting a ton. He's one of the faces of Bellator right now. He's one of those guys that you have to watch, you have to cover if you're a fan of MMA, if you're covering MMA. He had, in my opinion, the breakout performance of that event, and there were a lot of them. So
he's really impressive.
He's doing nothing wrong.
Impressive.
Nothing
he's backing
wrong.
it up.
Yeah.
Real quick, we gotta get through these. Swifty McSwiftface. People say nap or tap, but shouldn't the fight be over if you're not intelligently defending yourself? Obviously referring to Michael Chiesa, the stoppage with Mario Yamasaki. It seemed like he stopped fighting the hands. And so there's some people who are saying that should be enough to protect the fighter. There's a lot of people saying, obviously, he wasn't in danger of having any limbs broken or anything like that. And therefore, letting him either go to sleep or tap out was the way to have that fight end. Ultimately, first of all, where do you fall on whether it was an early stoppage or not? And would you consider that not intelligently defending yourself?
The problem was it was too short to make that claim. I mean, it was like 1 or 2 seconds where he wasn't doing that.
He didn't check. Didn't check.
B, I've seen a lot of people say, and I don't necessarily disagree, but I've seen people say, oh, he was about to tap. Yeah, you may be right. He was maybe 1 or 2 seconds away, and that's the real crime here. We would not be talking about anything. All we would be talking about is Kevin Lee's great performance, breakout performance, top contender. But the issue is he didn't tap, and he wasn't out. And so you can't assume. What's that famous saying? What happens when you assume? You make an ass out of you and me. When you're a referee, you can't assume. Here's the problem. Mario Yamasaki has been messing up for quite some time, and he's doing it more so now than ever. And his confidence is shot. And there's nothing worse than a referee, especially in MMA, who has low confidence, who's starting to question himself. He lets fights go on too long. We were just talking about this, like 2 weeks ago, that he's stopping fights way too late. So this time he was trigger happy and tried to right the wrong and got in there too early because he's thinking too much. He's not reacting to what's happening. He's overthinking things. And so he needs to get demoted. He needs to take a step back, work your way back up. And I know that there is a shortage of great referees, but hey, Keith Peterson, I think, is doing a great job as of late. We know about Big John. We know about Herb Dean. There are enough out there. You can't keep messing up this much and still get the same spot. You can't. There needs to be some kind of process where, like in every other sport, the referees that officiate the big events, they're the ones who have had the best year. There are people who are overseeing this. You know what I mean? And you can't keep messing up and then get main events. And Dana White could go on Instagram all he wants and say all he wants, that he's bad and all this, and take shots at him, which I don't think was necessary, if I'm being honest. Like him doing hearts has nothing to do with what he does as a referee. But the UFC has a lot of influence on these commissions. They're bringing, an event that's generating a lot of money for the state of Oklahoma. They can easily tell the state of Oklahoma that we do not want you to assign Mario Yamasaki to any of our fights. When they go overseas, they could easily not assign Mario Yamasaki to the fights. So you're not washing your hands of this situation. You're just as at fault here. Tell the commissions, speak to Yamasaki, get him some good training, do this the right way, because at the end of the day, it's only ruining your product.
Yeah. And I think obviously we know that it has nothing to do with the hearts, but people are frustrated with this, and something needs to be done.
He needs to just be more consistent and to start trusting himself again. Right now, he's not. He's in a funk. You got to get him out of there. It's not fair. It's not right.
We know Tony Ferguson and Khabib are fighting. What about Kevin Lee? What do you want to see?
Do we know that? I mean,
okay, fair enough.
That's the talk. But go ahead.
And we also saw Kevin Lee get after it on Fox with Tony Ferguson.
I kind of feel like I want to see that fight now. By the way, some breaking news today. The UFC announced that August 19th has been canceled. So that pay-per-view that was supposed to be 215 is now the September 9th card in Edmonton. And this was the right call because that's a week before August 26th. That's a week before Mayweather-McGregor. It made no sense to keep that pay-per-view. Also buys them some time with the DJ situation, which I think is very good news for all parties involved. And so we'll see what happens as far as the Edmonton card goes. There was some fights that we had reported, Mike Perry, Thiago Alves. Maybe those get moved. The reason I bring this up is because I had been told that they were targeting September for Ferguson and Khabib. Does that change now because of what happened last night? I don't know. But, Kevin Lee, I mean, he's still. I'm sure he's going to go in the top 10 now. But Quinta rematch would be fantastic. Who else is out there? I mean, if you're going to do the Ferguson Khabib fight, yeah, maybe Quinta.
I love that. Let's do that.
Do that one again.
I don't want to see Chiesa and Lee right away.
I don't want to see it again. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't want another 6 months of like mom talk and I feel like we've kind of
we played that promo out and
maybe 2-3 fights down the line we run it back, but I don't think that
even if we can all say definitively that Michael Chiesa didn't tap. I didn't see anything in that fight that made me think I want to see him against Kevin Lee again.
Edson Barbosa?
Sure. I mean, look, what was he, number 11 heading into the fight?
Winner of Gaethje Johnson?
Any one of those, I think is a worthy opponent for him, and he'd be a worthy opponent for them. So yeah, I want to see him vaulted into the upper echelon.
I'm such a fan. He is doing a great job, and I thought,
listen. You two are buddy now.
I thought
you started a bromance.
He did such a good job on Fox there. I mean, this idea of having Tony Ferguson sit there and play analyst and ask him these questions, it is completely off. Like they should stop doing that. And I think good on Kevin for actually sticking up for himself and for not taking it.
Number one Kevin Lee fan, Ariel Helwani. Who would have thought? Okay, Daniel Cormier beats John Jones. Is he the best at light heavyweight? Does that cement it, or do you still think that even with a win, he's not going to be able to get out of the shadow, the legacy kind of John Jones?
I guess it depends on how he beats him, but you know how I feel about DC. I think it's 1 versus 2 pound for pound. I think if he wins, now there's some discussion as to who is the greatest of all time at light heavyweight. And I do think that I really do think that this could be one of the best rivalries, and I think that you can make a very strong case that he is the greatest if he beats him. Now, of course,
if he beats him,
if he beats him, and if he knocks him out or something, I mean, at that point they both have one loss because I'm not going to count the Matt Hamill loss, right? Look at the strength of schedule. Look at what Cormier did at heavyweight. There's a case.
I think there's a case, but I think ultimately, even if he comes out and starches John Jones real quick, there'll be justifications. They'll be explaining away. I think if you can get it done twice, I think DC may be able to rightfully claim that spot. But I think until then, it's John Jones, the man in that.
Well,
division.
until then, yeah. I mean, he has the win over.
I'm saying twice. I think he needs 2.
Oh.
Because I think if he gets this one, I still don't think that'll be enough to get people thinking, John Jones was off for so long. He's had all these issues. He'll come back in the next one and get him. So I think Cormier would need 2.
But there's a greater case to be made.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you could make a case right now, to be honest. It's not completely laughable. I would side with John Jones being the best in that division ever, and in fact the best ever. But it's not a laughable position to have. Do you think Conor is capable of getting Floyd emotionally unstable? I'm seeing a lot of this that Conor's best path to victory is beating Floyd mentally. Is that something that you could foresee? Do you think that matters?
I was just talking about this with someone yesterday. This is going to be the most fascinating part of the World Tour, which will happen in July. They're working on the dates. They're working on the cities. I do think it's going to be neutral cities. So I don't think that we're going to see anything in Ireland, at least as of right now.
What?
Because I think that that's something that was discussed or asked. And one of the things that we haven't seen as far as Floyd opponents are concerned is someone really try to get under his skin. Again, remember that tweet about CJ Watson? How obscure was that? CJ Watson, the basketball player who had a history with one of Floyd's girlfriends. Conor goes there. Conor knows these things. He does his research.
Conor sees all.
He's cerebral when it comes to this stuff.
Oh yeah.
So
he's going to dig.
He is going to dig, and Floyd's going to dig back, and he's not going to get anywhere near where Conor could go. Say all you want about the fight. The trash talk will not be close, and that will be a shock if it is. It will be truly shocking if Floyd gets the better of Conor as far as the trash talk against the showmanship, all this stuff and more. But here's the one thing that people aren't talking about right now. The press conferences are going to be brutal because they're both going to try to outdo each other as far as who gets there the latest. Floyd loves to do that. So who's going to show up first? Who's going to take it on the chin and show up first?
That's funny. And I think it will ultimately be Floyd.
Show up first?
to show up first.
Wow. I
I
don't know
think he
about
will.
that.
I
See how
think
big
he'll
of a
see it
deal
as-
was the A side, B side, all that stuff?
Yeah, but I think he'll see it as his charge to kind of be the A side and do that. But I think
That's not the role of the A side, though. The A side comes second.
sure you come in late, you make your fashionably late entrance, but I think I'm seeing that. But I see these things.
Yeah.
But I think Floyd could win the trash talk in one very simple way is just Conor stands to make a lot of money. Floyd Mayweather has made a lot of money. And if there's ways he can figure out how to flex that in Conor's face in a way that Conor can't counter, I could see him figuring out a way to swing that. Now, do I think in a verbal battle that he's ever going to beat Conor McGregor? I don't. I've never been a fan of Floyd Mayweather's trash talk. I don't think it's particularly impressive. But I think there's a way he could position it that he would be able to flex on Conor. I really do.
It's going to be interesting to see if he goes after like the whole you have bosses and you work for Dana White and all that stuff.
Exactly.
your
And
net worth.
that's it.
Yeah,
Conor
so
is
I
on
can
the
see
path to where Floyd Mayweather is.
Sure.
Mayweather's already there.
Can't wait for this world tour.
Let's hit a few of these
Okay.
quickly. Musashi contract negotiations. Do we know anything more?
They were so close not that long ago, and then they met at the retreat, and I feel at this point they're going to wait to see if they can talk to Bellator. You heard from Scott about this, and I think that they're going to make a play for him. How big of a play? Is he outpricing himself? But they were close, and now there's no deal.
Carlos Condit. Is he done? Are we hearing anything
I've been
to the
told
contrary?
that he gets the itch and that he might come back at the end of the year, but as of right now, no plans for him to come back, and I would still put him in that sort of, he never actually said the word retire, I don't think, but in that inactive category.
What about Carlos Condit former opponent, Dan Hardy? Is he going to fight?
I don't know
before
about
this
that.
year's
I mean,
up?
that's. I mean, I think he said that he's on the road to getting clear and things like that. But with Dan, I mean, he's got a lot going on. Just had a book come out, TV work, a very busy guy. I'm only really going to believe that one until I actually see him start training, get a fight announced. Until then, I put him in that retired category as well.
Goldie replacement. They were talking about somebody coming in. Do you have any?
From what I understand, it's still
on this?
John Anik, and they're happy with the 3-man booth for the pay-per-views, and also they've done a great job of grooming active fighters into color commentators, analysts. They've got a nice bank of guys. Again, I'll reiterate what I said back in December when this story came out. If they are looking for someone else, if they spent a second looking for someone not named John Anik, they have completely lost their minds. He is the man for that job. He is arguably the hardest working man in broadcasting as far as doing his research and crossing all the T's, dotting the I's, listening, for pronunciations, getting everything right. He has paid his dues. He was supposed to get this job a long time ago. He is very good at his job. Why are you looking for anything else? Why are you looking for anyone else?
The grass is always greener.
No.
You know how
Okay,
it goes.
first of all, there are 3 really good MMA play-by-play guys right now, right? I know. I take that back. There are more.
No,
but
there's more than.
As far as North America is concerned, the most recognizable names are Morrow, Goldie, and Anik, right? Right now.
Most recognizable for sure, yeah.
But there are way more than that. I mean, John Gooden is fantastic. They have him. Todd Harris is doing a great job.
TJ DeSantis.
TJ DeSantis does a phenomenal job. He's under the Fight Pass. What they're going to do, by the way, is they're going to use the Tuesday Night Fights thing also as an outlet to groom potential future play-by-play people and color analysts. So you're going to see a lot of new names, familiar names coming through those doors, so to speak. So that's another element that's going to be interesting about that particular series. But the reason I say this is you've got one of the guys. Don't bring in a guy who comes from another sport. He won't be John Anik. It would be nice to see them give him that vote of confidence and say, we got our guy, all is well. We've got 2 other guys in Harris and Gooden who do fine jobs when they're called upon. What are they looking for? Anyway, I'm going on a rant here, but no, I have not heard about any other new names coming in.
What is your favorite MMA memory?
What?
What is your favorite MMA memory? Go now.
Come
Spit.
on. You say one first. You've been thinking about this. Tell me one first.
Yeah, it's very easy for me. My first live event, BJ Penn versus Kenny Florian, leading into then Anderson Silva versus Forrest Griffin. Just that whole sequence of those 2 fights I was elated. I couldn't believe, like, my feet were floating off the ground seeing that in person in Philly for UFC 101.
Gosh, I don't know.
Will stick with me forever.
Yeah, that's a great moment. I mean, so many come to mind. Dublin comes to mind.
An interview, maybe, like somebody you talked to, something you...
Listen, I've been talking for 5+ hours now. Are you going to ask me my favorite memory? This is a tough question.
Well, you know what? Your memory's failed you.
It's a great question. But the whole journey has been fantastic. What can I say? My favorite MMA memory, you know what I'll say is? My favorite MMA memory is when the people stood up for me, when the journalists stood up, when the media stood up and got me back in when I thought I was done. So that
is great.
Fair
enough.
That was surreal.
We had somebody call their shot. I thought it was worth highlighting. Anthony, in light of Brian Kelleher, I thought it was worth highlighting.
I saw at MSG, by the way, sitting in the front row.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Star maker. Calling his shot, he says he's going to be on the show within 3 years. So, Anthony, good luck to you. Let's see if you can make that happen.
All right.
How about Chase Sherman, now in the UFC, getting the people to rally?
Can I just say something?
And tag us.
He is so much fun. He's very entertaining. I still don't believe it's him. I want to see a video.
You don't believe? Oh.
No, I think it's his manager doing it. There, I said it.
The gauntlet has been thrown, Chase.
Show me a video of you posting these tweets, and then maybe I'll consider. But for now, I think it's his management that's doing it.
Chase, you gotta show up now.
If not, he doesn't train because he's tweeting GIFs all day, or GIFs, whatever you call them.
Last thing here. 007180.
That's my guy. Way back in the day, like pre-Jerry Park.
He's the man. He asked me. I think this one is very clearly for me. Was CT too fat? So he sent Wes into the finale, or did he throw him a wasted bone? This is in reference to that challenge that CM Punk was on. The world's greatest athlete, CT, gave up his spot to Wes. No, CT, it was not too fat. He gave his spot because he's a good friend to Wes. Otherwise, CT would have dominated everybody because he's the greatest athlete we have in the United States and possibly the world.
I think that's our cue that we've gone too long.
That's it. We're done.
What you just said.
Yeah, look, you don't keep up with the latest things.
Wow, how much fun has this been? So that's it?
That's it. That's our Twitter segment. That's our first one. I feel like it was good.
It was great. It was phenomenal. We'll be doing this again for many, many, many weeks. Thank you to everyone who sent us questions and comments and used the hashtag. It's been phenomenal. I really appreciate it.